What is up, everybody, man? I am excited for today's conversation, and it's one that we've been trying to have for quite some time. But definitely getting into kind of what's happening in the market, what's going on. But I really want to jump into to your niche, and here's the thing that made me like holy smokes in just a short period of time what you can do, right? So um, one, I would love for you to kind of tell us the backstory of the bourbon fascination and kind of where things have come for you in the niche. And what was really cool, Stacey, when we were kind of working through your story, especially your story since coming to EXP, and as we were building out the presentation for the rally earlier this year, and looking at what I love with sometimes we have to take on some type of lead source that doesn't pay us that much on the front end, right? Because of the customer acquisition cost being either a paid at closing or it's a little bit higher cost per lead, but understanding lifetime value. That was one really cool thing from your story. But the other was the fascination in the niche and the community that you've really latched onto, and that's the bourbon community. I'm bourbon fan. I love bourbon as well, but to build and amass a collection like you have in such a short period of time, like when you told me like it really didn't become a thing for you until during the pandemic, I was like, what? That's even more fascinating. So like, tell me about that story.
So, it's actually even tied to real estate because it was late, probably like in October of 2020 when I had a closing, and the seller was a big bourbon guy. And so I wanted to give him a special closing gift. So I blocked him on Facebook, went out there and said, hey, I need help. I need to get a bourbon gift for the seller, knowing nothing about bourbon. And it's funny too, because if you know me as I'm a very social, like casual drinker, I drink beer as light as they come. It's like water. And so I knew nothing about this hard liquor world, nothing like that. And someone said, well, you got to get him a Blanton's. No clue what it was. And so I started talking to him. I was like, where do I get it? They're like, well, it's really hard to get. I'm like, that's okay. It can be costly. I'm like, that's okay. When's the closing? I was like, tomorrow. They said, that'll never happen. And I was like, what do you mean that'll never happen? They said, well, it's like you've got to go underground. You can't get it in the stores. People drive states away to get it. And I was like, and this was during the pandemic. And I had a really good friend. He was here in Columbus. We had a restaurant. It didn't make it through the pandemic, unfortunately. Really high end. It was called the M, and he was the head chef there. And I was like, well, if anybody knows how to get this, it'll be him. So I call him. He's Russian. And I would try to do his accent, but I can't. He said, I get that for you. I get that for you. Makes, a couple hours later, okay, meet me here. And so we're meeting in like a parking lot, like in the middle of nowhere. Like, I'm like, what is this? This is crazy. He's like, I got you 4 bottles. I'm like, no, I only need 1. No, you take 4. I'm like, okay, I'll take 4 bottles of Blanton's. Bought them, paid crazy price for them. Now I know that that's a crazy price. So I'm pretty sure my first bottle of bourbon came from the Russian mafia. But that whole process intrigued me. I was like, what is this? What is this world? What is bourbon? And what's interesting for me is I think the reason it becomes such a passion versus just a hobby time or a social thing is I started things backwards because I started digging in and I started looking at like the history, the distilleries. I started reading up on the families, and I didn't even like it. Like when I first started, I didn't like it. I tried to like it because I loved the American spirit, like everything behind it. And so it was a world that I immersed myself in, not even really liking the bourbon yet, which now I love. And it was a process. And I think that's what's really neat for me too, is the community I'm in and the fact of the way that I started. I love, and it ties into my real estate. I love educating people and helping them because there is a process to loving bourbon and getting to know bourbon and to really enjoying bourbon. And a lot of people that start with a nope, hate it. I can really take them through the steps to where they turn into really being a bourbon connoisseur, which is good.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy once we find something that just absolutely fascinates us, and just the rabbit holes that we go down to learn so much about it, right? You don't even realize it's essentially a passion until you actually, days, weeks, months later, and you're still doing the research. You just can't get enough of that. And we've all had that. And in some aspect of our lives. And Gary Vee talked about it, right? Like, you love the Smurfs, go get around the Smurfs. And, you really took that concept with bourbon and have really built just an incredible business model for yourself and Jim around that niche and that community and that fascination of the bourbon world. What was, because I'm just intrigued just to, as much as you. And it's funny now, because I told you I had a really good friend client, as a couple thank yous. I've got 2 bottles of Blanton's,
Right.
at the house. And I'm like, didn't even think anything about it. And yeah, the process he had to go through. He was in a bourbon club, and every time they meet, everybody brings a different bottle, and they sit around and they have this collection in part of the group. And he was just telling me, yeah, some of the guys live on the road, so as they're traveling, they know the little ins and outs and the places to stop to pick up bottles that you can't find anywhere. It's like listen, I think my go-to is Buffalo Trace. You can't find it anywhere, but you go into any restaurant, they've got dozens of bottles of Buffalo Trace everywhere. So yeah, for you, what was the thing that that fascinated you the most?
So I'm a little competitive. So the fact that they told me I couldn't get it by tomorrow was one, but then that just the collection part of it. It's hard to describe, because once I realized that these were so sought after, it became something that I immerse myself in quickly. All the bottles I have are very rare. I take pride in that. The community that's surrounding that. It's, they say with real estate, there's riches and niches. You hear that all the time. But I think more is linked to passion. When I talk to, we work with a lot of our younger agents. I'm like, when you're passionate about someone and you go into their community, whether it's a church, whether it's a nonprofit, whether it's a charity, something that you're really, truly, genuinely passionate about, and you're in all the time, those people become clients because they want to work with people that they know, like, and trust. Sorry. Yeah, it's real, right? Real life. And I find that to be true, because that community that I very fastly got immersed, it became a very valuable source of real estate for me. So I use my example, but yet turn it into their life. You know what I mean? If we're working with someone and they go to church every Sunday, I'm like, that is a place that you have earned the right to ask for business and to be because people want to do business with they know, like, and trust. And so for me, the bourbon world and the bourbon community just turned into a huge, like a snowball. And now, we're working obviously on our big project together. I just see it taking off. It's pretty awesome.
I do too. And, with that fascination, the end of 20 into 21 and really starting, and now we're starting to see, right. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. It takes time. Right. And, we've heard it, anything worth building takes time, takes decades. And you look at it even from a real estate perspective, getting in, that's why you start to see new agents really start to gain momentum year 3, 4, and 5, because that's when the people that they helped early on, now the referrals, or maybe they're coming back around, life's happened, they're starting to make another move or do something. And it's no different in the niches, right? And being able to get in, it takes time.
When I look at the 2 things in my life that I feel not only am I passionate about, but I consider myself very educated on, it's the bourbon and the real estate. And even though they're totally different, the whole process with them is the same. You know what I mean? Whether it's a young couple, a first-time home buyer that I'm helping with real estate. And I think it's a disservice if you have knowledge on something to not share it. You know what I mean? Like, and I think the more that you share, the more that people trust you, and that's creating that circle of a sphere that you can draw from in all avenues. Like it's all about the knowledge. And I was talking to a girl yesterday. I said, and in fact, I'm always learning on both avenues, like still in real estate and bourbon. I'm getting ready to go down. I'm the Ohio ambassador for the National Women's Bourbon Council. But we're all meeting, all the states are meeting in Kentucky this month in August. And we're literally from sun up to sundown. It's basically a bourbon university. From the architects, we're going to be learning from the architects on just, how they design the distillery, from the grain, the soil, to the glass, to the process. And it's just, I'm always learning and I'm always learning. And when you can pass that on in a genuine way, and people automatically trust you, and you can merge those two worlds very, very easily.
How have, studying the business side of bourbon, have you been able to take and apply into what you're doing with the real estate clients?
So it's interesting because, well, I think for one, obviously a whole new sphere. Anytime I think that you reinvent yourself, or if you need that new source of leads, like we were just talking about, that's one way. But I found too, even a third way to bridge the two is with charity. Like, with the bourbon world, one thing that we did this past year, which opened up a whole nother lead source. And that's, I hate calling it that, because the relationships, like we talked about with that, when we were putting our slide deck together, it is all about building relationships, and that has to be genuine. So instead of leads, I don't want to call them leads or transactions or listings and buyers, but I had a whole nother third tier of relationships open, because I joined my two. I took my real estate clients, my bourbon world, my connections, and we opened up and sponsored a charity last year, which was Leukemia Lymphoma Society, and we raised $51,000, and by merging those.
That's so awesome.
But just adding that third tier of relationships, and our business has just boomed. And I think it shows in 2024, that was our biggest year ever. And we took 3 months off in the Caribbean, and we raised the 51,000, and it was all these new. My book of business just grew organically. I didn't pay for one lead, one relationship, one sale, anything that whole year.
Yeah,
it was just organic.
It's just getting connected with the like-minded individuals, and no matter what, like you said, no matter what it is, if it's your church, if it's your golf community, like whatever it is, there's a community there, and it's just by being active and being a part of it. And so, I love that. And, you just pick up certain things, right? And it comes back like down to, you said, is just really connecting with people and building a relationship, and leads to conversations, and, just asking questions, being genuinely interested in what it is, why they're a part of this community, allows you to connect as well, which is really, really cool. So
I think when you're real and authentic with people, like they know you and they know you're not just showing up, that also gives you not the right to ask, but in a very non-casual way in all of my forums, because the bourbon community here in Central Ohio is very tight. I'm always making the jokes like, hey, remember me, I'm your bourbon realtor. Like, I give the best, I give the best closing gifts. And there's a lot of in-person events, which is always helpful. And my license plate is always this conversation starter. It was real estate, which we'll see how I'm gonna gauge which one has the most conversations. But the last in-person event I went to, we were talking about my license plate and being a realtor, and I had like 10 people around me in a very engaged conversation, and every one of them I said, listen, I'm a full-time realtor, I'm here for business, I got your it's very easy to ask for business when you're in that environment that you've created, that you're genuine about.
Yeah, that's so cool. And we know, the driving force with anything is always content, right? Being able to, create, because that allows us to connect with one to many in the social and the organic social side of things. And so talk to me a little bit about, this awesome project that is just unfolding, and really where that came from, and how you were able to bring the real estate world in together with your bourbon world.
So I think it was even a little bit of us going back and forth in some of our coaching sessions that we came up with the idea, and then it just started going forward. But it was an idea to blend my two worlds, because new builds, especially, I come from that background, being a new build rep for 9 years. I know construction, no matter what part, whether it's, custom on raw land, I know it like I know bourbon from the ground up. And so I was like, I wonder if there's a way we can like blend this. And I think we spitballed and we came up with that idea, and then it just rolled. So I'm excited, because the first episode is rolling out probably Thursday.
Yes.
It went really, really well. I wasn't sure, in my head, I'm like, this sounds like a good idea, but how? Okay, because we had a very vague script, but we just rolled with it. And what we did was it's a podcast, and we started I decided to do high-end custom builders, and I would blend it with local speakeasies or bourbons and bring everybody together. And it sounds like it would never mesh, and it just really, really did.
Yeah.
The builder we picked was great. She was their representative, had never tried bourbon, so it was so easy to keep, to blend it where we were talking with her at the model and their gorgeous, million plus home here in Columbus. That's a big house. We talked about her quality, the passion of the builder, and then we rolled that right into the distillery we chose, which was Buffalo Trace, the iconic Buffalo Trace, their history, their generational history, the products, the passion. She educated us on the build process. We educated her on the bourbon process. So it was very organic. Everybody was laughing. Everybody was having fun. We didn't have too much to drink, which was good.
Could have been a little more interesting.
That would have been fun. Yeah. But so it really worked well. It came together well especially
there's so many like similarities, right? Like you were just talking right there, like when you truly understand, even from, where the development, where the vision really comes from, right? And what you can envision with the finished product. And a lot of people can't see finished product, right? But, that's the beauty kind of with developers and builders. They have this vision to be able to go, and what it takes to the whole process that it takes to, produce this final result. And then you're able to take the similarities. It's the same, my understanding here, kind of listening to you and being able to talk to you through this whole journey, that it takes in the bourbon world, right? And the complexities and everything, and the vision that they have for that finished product to come out. So there's so many similarities, and that's why I feel it's just a perfect match.
Yeah. And it flowed very well. I think my hope is that as it grows, the content is so easy that anybody, no matter what world they're coming into, you know what I mean, they can watch, and they'll find something interesting with it. Each one's going to have some good tidbits.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's just so cool to understand, right? Even, how, taking pride in making anything, right? That's just worth making, right? Everything that has to go into it, and the time that it takes, and just the level of detail that it takes, especially on the high-end custom world, right? On the custom build side of things, and especially the higher price points, because we've all seen the mass builders, and you walk in, you can tell, right? And it's like we've all, if you like bourbon, we've all had the bourbon too. It's like, okay, and then but you get a good one.
We even had a chance to talk about that, because this particular builder, they are local to Columbus, but very well 3 decades they've been here. In fact, I started 2 years after him. He started, he was also in the 1900s. So he started in 1995. I started in 1997. I actually sold against him. We were telling these old wartime stories between the two of us. But I've had a chance to see him grow, and what we dialed it into, and even some of our conversations, is what we're experiencing now in the market, because they actually weathered the recession. We talked about Buffalo Trace with with Prohibition, and just the similarities also of exactly what the builders had to do, and the distilleries had to do during Prohibition to survive. And that's the type of people that come out on the other side. The distillery came out on the other side. 3 pillars came out on the other side. So it's crazy how it all links together sometimes.
Yeah. What's the biggest thing on the real estate side, as you kind of go down that reflective mode and talking history with history? Hey,
Jim will cover the rest.
There he comes.
I hear him going after him.
So what is so like 97 getting in, like over that time period, what is still the same, but what are some of the biggest changes that you've seen throughout that journey?
So I got in, and it's in my experience has been very helpful with just probably like you people you're mentoring right now. But when I got in, the wave was going like this. They were coming off of what had been a crazy ride for them in the early 1990s. So I knew nothing but that ride until about 2005, because here in our market, the new build market crashed quicker than the existing market did, and that's the market I was in.
Sure.
And I like to say that we learned our lesson the hard way. That's one thing I always say about coaching and having mentors, and you can relate to this. with anybody we work with, let our bumps and bruises and our, the punches that we took learn from, because that was rough. And there was very few. I know here personally, we had 10,000 and some agents. And by the time we got out of during that 4-year period, we went down to like 3,000. There was not a lot of people that rode that storm and came out on the other side. But coming out on the other side was a whole new wild, wild west of real estate, which I think is what helped us with the last couple of years we've been in. It's very similar. I don't think, and I think everybody agrees, we're not going to have another recession. But I do think, and I see some similarities with some stuff starting where the last couple of years, just like when I sold new builds, when we were on that crazy wave, there was people buying houses that they probably shouldn't have, with the 3-1 arms, 2-1 buy downs, in our market that was really big. And what I'm starting to see here now is in 2020, 2021 in our market, we had 20% appreciation those 2 years back to back. And it was on paper for a lot of people, I feel, because we had people paying $50,000 over list. They were appraisal gaps and stuff like that. And we're starting to see some of that come back into the market, where now they've had that crisis, whether it was a divorce, job loss, or something like that. They have to sell and they can't, because the market's correcting itself a little bit here. So this house, and so we're seeing some similarities. I don't think it's going to be the crazy, crazy dip that we obviously saw in 08 and the crash we saw, but we're seeing some similarities in our market.
Seeing those similarities, like, and being able to draw from that, right, in that experience, how are you communicating that with buyers, and how are you communicating that with sellers?
Key is upfront and understanding the market, because now when we sit and we look at numbers, I am no longer talking about, I always used to use a swinging pendulum. You know what I mean? When, in the last few years, we could price a little bit above, and the market caught up with it by the time. We had no problem getting that price. We had no problem getting that appraisal, because that's what we're seeing here too, is our appraisals are coming in short left and right. And now when I talk to sellers, if our data says we're here, we might want to price right here, because our inventory's up. Appraisers are getting really stingy with numbers. And I always tell them too, if you're going to get in our market, one plus that we have is it's still technically a seller's market. Obviously, real estate's very hyper local, even communities, but overall, it's still a seller's market. So if we happen, if I have them price smart, if they're going to get more than that, they're still going to get more than that. There's still buyers out there. There's still, there's still pent up demand where they've got safe searches waiting. One example we just had, the number shows 360s. We priced it 350, and he got the 360, because if the market's going to take it there, it's still going to take it there. You know what I mean? The buyer's not going to say, oh, because you priced at 350, that's all I'm paying. If it's priced right and it's priced good, they're still going to get it. You just can't be crazy. Yeah. And you've got to react to the market quick. I have some sellers that are still not listening to me. If they're within reason, a decent reason, I still take the listing, but I set the expectations up front. Listen, I'm willing to swing for the fence for you, the home run. If we don't get it in the first 2 weekends of having grand opening, mass marketing, we need to adjust. We need to adjust quickly. So I get that commitment up front, and I educate them up front, because if you tried to have that conversation after you listed too high, now you look like you're just backpedaling because you couldn't get the number that you allowed them to put on the listing.
Yeah. Are you seeing, like you said, when we used to look, and the data just hasn't caught up with what we know, just from experience, it's kind of top, middle, bottom of the market. I think positioning kind of in that middle of the market is really the new top of the market. Is that kind of how you're looking at it?
For sure. We're going back to something we haven't had to use in a long time, which is just the supply and demand chart. Kind of like if no one else lists, I just had this conversation with someone yesterday, and it was very eye-opening for them. And if no one else lists, we have 7 months worth of inventory in this particular area, being very hyper local. It was a buyer's market. Anytime you get past, in my experience, anytime you get past that 3-4 month threshold, that's turning into a buyer's market. And that's if nobody else lists. So we're really dialing down back into data. Data's got to be in. And when you have these conversations, this is not, we're having that hard conversation. It doesn't matter what you need or what you think you need to move on to the next step. And I'm not, this isn't my number. It's the data. I'm interpreting data. And I rely wholly on that. I don't pull 12 months of data. I start with 6. If I have more than 4 solid comps, I'll even dial that down into 3 months increments. You know what I mean? Like the last 3 months. And then I do take into consideration, I have them look at pending. If pending has a big days on market, look where that, you know what I mean? Like I'm showing them the numbers every which way. You can see the shift happening right here, even in the last 3 months that, yes, quote, sorry, that's a new build lead. Gets to bypass my silent thing. But sold might show, X price per square foot, but it was moving in 10 days. Now this pending took 30 days and it's less price per square foot. That shows me it's going to close out less than these.
So you're really paying attention to the pending, all the pending data, the pending information. Yeah, absolutely.
And even active, because our actives, we haven't seen some of the active lists we're getting now where you have 7 competitors in it. We haven't seen those kind of numbers in a long time. You know what I mean? Because we used to be so short on inventory that we didn't, you'd have 1 or 2 actives maybe to compete against.
Yeah, that was the big data. That was the big number for us, right? We always look at the pending ratio, kind of what that is, what's that showing. And then we would also look at kind of what's that average, like you said, on the pendings, because that's going to kind of tell the story of where things are going, and really getting a good grasp and understanding and a way to articulate that to buyers, obviously sellers as well, but you've got to educate everybody. So that was always the number for us, right? It's not just having that number, but being able to, what does that number mean?
And it's time to get creative too. We are still in a situation where a lot of sellers have equity because of those few years that went crazy. Not a lot of them have cash. So one of the things that we've been teaching our mentees is that, listen, make the connections with contractors and stuff, because now too, not only do you have to be priced in the middle, we have to look the best. Before we used to tell them, you don't have to paint, don't worry about carpeting, you're going to have multiple offers, and that's not the case now. So if you go in and you see that they need paint, carpeting, and that's, if they can do it, great. If they can't, have those connections where your contractors will do it and get paid on the settlement statement. It's time that it's coming back to being skill-based and really educating yourself and being very creative to get your listings sold. Because if you can get your listings sold, you get listings. Yeah. That's what we're fighting for.
Yeah. People, I mean, it's that social proof, right? Other sellers want to see that you can actually demonstrate and do what it is that you need to do. When looking for, because this is also a big challenge, right? Especially on the listing side of things, or just an agent in general, is being able to have good people, good contractors. Kind of what is that vetting process for you to find, good trades, good skill, good help that you can rely on?
Look in your market. If you have it, awesome. If you don't have it, create it. And what we did in our local market was the top agents, probably about the top 5% of agents all got together, and we created a private Facebook group that started out with us. And then we they had to be vetted by one of the top agents, contractors, hard money lenders, investors, anybody that had to do with our real estate forum. But it's a very tight-knit group. If you're in that group, you're vetted. If you screw up, you're out. So that's a great source to start. Whenever I ask for referrals, anybody that refers themselves goes out the door. That's not what I'm looking for. I want referrals from someone that has used them, trusted them, they've had good customer experience, pricing's good. And that's so that group, and it's a good way for us also to stay in front of agents. You know what I mean? If building agents is important to you, if you can control that group, it's a solid source of good info, good people.
Yeah, it is. I think people that, like you said, are going to do a great job, do what they say they're going to do. They're going to show up, get it done.
And they're vetted.
And they're vetted. Yeah, that's super, super important. But it's super important to have those people. And sometimes you got to kind of you get some good people. Like it's hard to want to push them out to anybody else as well. Yeah, it's a bit of a challenge. So, Stacey, on the other, kind of thing we alluded to before we jumped into the, bourbon talk and bringing the two with new construction together with, the Bourbon and Builds content and podcast and direction that you're going. We talked about early on that I really loved, and coming first into EXP, you took advantage of everything EXP had to offer from a lead standpoint. This is what I always tell agents too, right? If you're struggling, get access to everything that you can, that where you're at, the company that's providing that value, and just being a part of the revenue stuff. Like, you did some deals that actually cost you money to do. However, the lifetime value of that lead source and that opportunity, sometimes you can't even get your head around, what that whole lifetime value is going to be. So looking at that, working, for you, that story, but also with the mentees, how important is that to have some type of lead source constantly coming in that potentially is going to maybe cost you a little bit more on the, at closing, but understanding the importance of lifetime value?
It's huge. When I joined EXP in 2018, I think I had consistently done, I was an independent agent. We were at a small brokerage. We'd done the Remax Keller Williams route, but we were at a boutique brokerage, and I had a few years of just hovering around that 10 million mark, which was good. I was happy. I was content. I didn't realize there was a much, you don't, when you're in the, what's that saying about you can't see the trees from the forest?
Yeah,
I was just every day. It was just the same. And when I joined EXP, and when we joined EXP in late 2018, it took about a year for me to really start listening. Because one thing that all of a sudden I went from where it was just me out there, by myself, to I was immersed into people that were doing not only more than me, but they were sharing. And so when you just start getting in that environment where you're hearing it and seeing it and stuff like that, I started really buying into it and realized that, for one, I think I want more. I've seen the lifestyles they were living and some of the stuff they were doing, and they were, you would expect them to be doing less than me because they were never here, never always traveling, and here they are doing way more. So I totally bought into the Revenos, and Revenos was a lead source, and you can take that to any type of lead source if it's Redfin, UpCity, Realtor.com out there. And I really just started building relationships. I stopped looking at it didn't matter. I signed up for everything. I got certified for everything. Each time they rolled something out, I got certified for it. And there's some I got on my own, Veterans United and stuff like that. And I stopped looking at what I was paying out. I stopped looking at what the price point was. I stopped looking at scenarios. The only thing that I bound myself by, which I even stretched occasionally, was an hour and 20 drive time. That was kind of like I kind of had my boundaries on. I would take anything that if it was within this time frame. And I just started working those relationships, and I retaught myself. And then within, it was something that it was a mind shift for me. And when it started snowballing, it took me about 2 or 3 years of having to take every one of those to start building a snowball that kind of like I pushed up the hill and it started going. And I went in 5 years, I went from, that 10 million mark to 27 million. And it was literally built off of relationships. I paid referral fees at closing, but I wasn't doing Zillow leads. I wasn't doing anything up front. And when I started looking at people as a long lifetime relationship, like, what I mean? Like, just an example, one that we talked about, by the time I got doing it, she was an hour and 8 minutes away. I remember it exactly because I teach this now to my kiddos. I call them my real estate kiddos. It was 1 hour and 8 minutes each way, and the sales price was really low. The seller only wanted to do 2%, and by the time I was done, I got paid $908. And I had made that drive an hour and something each way numerous times. But she immediately, her mom, who I'd met during the process, turned around and gave me $1.5 million in business with 3 different deals that I didn't know the referral fee on. And so that's the example I always use. And they're still avid fans. I'm still getting, referrals from them. So it's just when you stop looking at the person as a paycheck and start thinking about them as a lifelong relationship, because for one, and I had to get better, and EXP obviously made it easier with our CRMs and stuff like that. One thing I got good at was taking them and putting them into something that I was consistent on with touches. And inviting them to our parties and sending them and making sure. And if I could find them, I would ask if I could follow them on social media and vice versa. Because we just do a lot with even social media, staying in touch with people. And when I started actually working relationships, that's the one thing I wish I could go back and tell myself in 1997 is to save all that information. Save it in a card once a year. You'll be, but I got really good at that. And I had to draw a line in the sand because it can be a little overwhelming if you think about the business you've lost. And we decided, we've got all the info from 2018 and on, and that business has just started going. I couldn't stop it if I want to, and that's allowed us to open up doors where they trust and know us too, where we can travel and do a lot of our business, over Zoom.
Virtually. Yeah. Because you have built so much trust, and you've made trust in the people they refer over. They already trust you because they were referred over to you by somebody that, you've done a great job, a great experience, and just help them get the result that they really want.
We've dealt with couple of agents recently too, because you'd be surprised, agents that have been in the business for a while, and I'm guilty of this, they get a little stubborn. You know what I mean? That I need more, I want more, or I'm not making as much, but yet they don't want to go back to, like I kind of said, drawing that line in the sand. Because that first 3 or 4 years of, probably 3 years of taking all those leads, that was like someone brand new in the business. I had to act like someone brand new in the business. Yes, I'll take that $100,000 lead. Yes, I'll take that $150,000 lead. Yes, I'll make that drive that's an hour away for it. But when you do that, you don't have to do that forever. You know what I mean? Like that's what that was my mindset, to go back, draw the line, rebuild, and focus on it. And once about that 3 year where that snowball started going, now I obviously, the freedom has come back a little bit. I've built a solid foundation, which is what I lacked. I was busier doing the 10 million because I had no solid foundation. I was 80 hours a week working.
Reactive. Yeah.
And now I stopped and did a rebuild, literally starting from scratch as if I was a brand new agent, build a solid foundation that I'm still keeping up with. And now I can relax more but yet my business is still growing.
Right. Yeah. It's such a great point. And, the king of shaking hands and kissing babies, Andrew Gadosh, he, built his business on relationships as well. And what he did in Lock and Grin, and then, in Dayton at Yankee Trace, and just what he's kind of the whole neighborhood mayor program and everything he's been able to do. But that was the one thing that he always just hammered home, that the CRM, the database. And he still uses an antiquated, you would say outdated CRM, but he uses it, and it's just really works for him. But he always stresses that, right? Like, you just got to have something where you're putting these contacts, because it is a relationship game.
Yeah, it is literally the one thing, because you get asked that question a lot. What would you do different, or what would you tell yourself? And that is probably the one thing that it's just worth millions. That your past database and your past if you keep up with them. Mm-hmm. That's the thing too, is what I mean. You've got to do the right stuff, and I think times have changed. Back then we were literally handwriting stuff. I think it's so easy now to truly stay in touch and in front of them with a genuine touch, even though it's automated, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And especially as things are evolving fast with different AI and different AI apps, and, just being able to have all of those contacts in one place, to be able to just start having a conversation now with the AI to help you identify, if you have those past clients, it's like, hey, who haven't I talked to in a while that I need to reach out to and help me connect with them on a personal level of what to say and what to do. It's the holy grail, right? It's like you said, we had to, handwrite cards. You can only do a few a day and just try to stay consistent with it. But where tech is at, we're able to have that one-on-one personal touch at scale, which is just wild to think about.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And two, I think if you keep it, with me, I do cheat with social media. If I'm getting ready to make a reach out, I go back and spend a couple of minutes getting caught up on kids' names, pets' names, what they're doing, big moves, stuff. And that way, when you're talking to them, it's like, oh yeah, I saw that. I saw that you just moved to here, or you just had a baby.
Yeah. It is. It's so important, right, to be able to have that, and just to have that personal relevance, to be able to connect with them, right away, reconnect with them right away. So,
and just keep the mindset, that relationship. They may only sell statistically every 5 to 7 years, but if you keep those touches up, the referrals come in easy.
It was interesting what you just said, right? You were busier and more reactive, spending more time doing 10 million in production versus, to where we're at today. And that's where the burnout comes in. And I think it's just doing a bunch of stuff that you don't even love. And when you can find the niche and being able to carry that over into kind of, how we get paid and how we're able to carry that over, there's just really no burnout there. You absolutely just love it.
Yeah, and I do. Jim talks all the time, because he's like, let's just go into attraction and rev share. I'm like, I still like selling. Like, I'm still genuinely and I still am drawn to the first time home buyer, which automatically a lot of times has a lower price point. I don't even focus on that. I enjoy it. I like it. There might be a point that I don't, but not right now.
Yeah. I think it's the correlation, just like what we were talking about earlier with the bourbon, right? Just the fascination, the educational side of things. And first time home buyers, there's a lot of education, a lot of walking them through the process and really understanding it. So, I can see, the passion in one is the passion in the other. It's the how we do anything, how we do everything. And that's so awesome to lean into.
Yep. I agree 100%.
Stacey, I appreciate you. The bourbon fascination is fascinating to me. And I think what's even more fascinating is how fast that can be built. Right. I mean, we're talking really towards the end of 20 into 21. So we're, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. I mean, we're not even maybe now good 5 full years into this passion and this, hobby and collection and just everything. And just how that carries over. So it's really fascinating to start. And that's what I would always tell anybody else, if there's true passion there. It's the question, right? What do you study? What do you study when you don't have to? What are you studying?
Yep. And definitely blending the two worlds for realtors, for sure.
Yeah, it's so good. Stacey, thank you so much. And I cannot wait to see the new podcast and the new series, Bourbon and Build. And where is that going to be dropping at? Where are we going to be able to get a hold of that?
For Bourbon and Builds.
Yep. So everything will be over on YouTube. Bourbon and Builds is the channel.
Mm-hmm. Bourbon and Builds.
Cool. Well, fantastic. Stacey, thank you so much. Looking forward to it. And you guys, make sure you tune in. Go check out an episode of Bourbon and Builds as we get that launched here this week. I love it. Awesome. Thank you. We'll see you guys.